Hello, people of the internet. Welcome to this special report, your news and views program about geek gaming culture. Coming up in the show today, a trio of WWE stories. First one is a sad one. Lexi, Kaufman, Alexa Bliss loses her pet pig, Larry Steve, this past Monday. Velveteen Dream finally responds to the allegations that were put forth in hashtag speaking out against him, which he says led to his eventual release this past Monday. And Dana Warrior calls out Vice Media. It's about time someone actually did. It is a lot to get to, so we'll get to that in the OCRemix track of the day, which comes your way right about now. We're going to start out with probably a sad story. Well, it is a sad story, but it also is something that I feel as though once you hear it, you'll wonder what was the whole problem with the vet actually being able to take such an animal and what can be done about it. If you are a fan of the WWE and fan of WWE women's wrestler Lexi Kaufman, who goes by the name Alexa Bliss on Monday Night Raw, and someone who I have talked about extensively on a couple of videos taking her side in the whole JD from NY situation, you will probably know that she had a pet pig by the name of Larry Steve. He was a much beloved pet for both her and her fans. He even had a Instagram and a Twitter account devoted to him, and was heavily featured on Total Divas and on WWE.com. Well, if you were watching Raw this past Monday, you will probably have noticed that she was absent, albeit for a little bit of a advancement of a storyline that she's involved in at the end of Raw, but she wasn't there in person. The reason for that is that on her Instagram, she was asking for some help. Apparently, her pet pig was ill, and she was trying to find a vet that would be able to take him. Now, the controversy here is that vets are known to not be able to take these kinds of animals, these kinds of livestock animals. You might need to have a specialist be able to address any kind of situations or any kind of sickness. And because of that, because of the emergency, it may have led to what we found out this past Tuesday morning. Because on Tuesday morning, Lexi posted to her Twitter and to her Instagram account this photo here. It is much a sad photo, and by the photo you probably know what eventually transpired. Now, I'm not saying it's the vet's fault for what had transpired. However, it is a sad story all around, and the basics behind this is that the world had lost a beloved pet and member of the WWE family. Speaking on Instagram, she had posted, quote, "On the day before his 4th birthday, this morning Larry Steve gained his angel wings. I'm so sorry we couldn't find you the help you needed in time. Some people didn't understand, but I want you to know, Larry, your life mattered. We are completely heartbroken." Now, of course, Lexi is more than justified for not appearing on Raw last night because of the situation. I had to both give away and lose a pet of my own. This is not an easy thing to do. This is not an easy thing for anybody to have to go through. Pets are members of the family. They are family members, and especially if you are around them for such a long time and they become basically a part of you. They become beloved family members. I know I'm repeating myself here, but that is something that is undoubtedly true. And it was hard on me for having to both give away a family member and then having to lose a family member with being a pet, because again, a pet's a family member. So it is well within the bounds of her not being able to attend Raw this past Monday. And it was good in the WWE in order to give her the time that she needs, and I hope that they continue to do that until she's ready to come back to the ring. I'm sure that this is devastating her. It's devastating to the entire fan base that had loved the fact that she had a unique animal as a pet. Not many people have pigs that are a pet. I know one person who did back in the day. I'm not sure if they still have it or not. It's been a long time since I've known about them, but it's not completely out of the bounds for somebody to have a pet pig. This also raises a question of why couldn't she find a vet that could take him? I'm not saying it's her fault either. I'm not saying that at all, but she shouldn't have had that much trouble because the vets should have a bit of a system in place in case something like this were to happen. Even if they were not able to take these bigger for animals in any sort of normal capacity. This wasn't a normal capacity. This was an emergency. At the very least, they could have tried to say, hey, we'll try to do something to help you out here. This could have been avoided. For all we know, he could have still been alive today if the vets had any way in order to address this situation. Now, they may have not been able to. Now, I'm not saying, again, that this is any fault of their own. They may have not had the correct capacity to do anything, but they could have at least tried to do something about this. And maybe this more high-profile situation with somebody who's in the public spotlight will give some escalation to a very unique situation such as this, to where if someone who does not have the public persona that Lexi Kaufman has, that can't have a public platform to be able to ask for help if they need to for an animal such as this, where are they supposed to go? Where are they supposed to be able to do? And yeah, hopefully this does raise the situation to where it does get addressed. Maybe this is something that could have been avoided, but nonetheless, our hearts and our prayers go out to Lexi Kaufman during this trying time, and we hope that she takes all the time she needs before she's able to come back to the ring and able to entertain us the way we know she can. This is one pig that's going to sorely be missed. Now to some more scandalous news now. Velveteen Dream, you may remember who this guy is. He's the one that was accused of grooming at least 2 people when he was caught in this whole speaking out business that was happening. I think it was about a year ago. I had said something about all of this when Brian Zane, Wrestling with Regret, decided to say that he would rather believe that someone is guilty and then find out they're innocent than to enact due process, which was kind of something he hasn't backed down from, and something that he is probably actually doubled down about. And yeah, I'll get to some other things he said in the next story as well, but you might hear me saying in that video that Velveteen Dream was the one person that the accusations against him didn't look very good for him. Well, even though the WWE had an internal investigation and didn't find that the claims were creditable, they kind of nixed his push, and this past Monday or Sunday, early Monday, they decided to cut him from the WWE. They actually released him. Now, ever since that accusations came out, he had stayed silent. Now, this might be because of any legal matters. Again, you have the right to remain silent. Any words you say can be used against you in a court of law if it gets there. However, now he has decided to speak out. Now, there is a lengthy Instagram post in which he goes on record as saying the origins of his gimmick, Velveteen Dream. His real name is Patrick Clark. He based this whole thing off of Prince and his likeliness and all of that. And of course, he didn't know much about Prince at the time, and now he knows a little bit more about how to behave like Prince, apparently. However, the most important part of all of this comes when he starts bringing up the 2 main people who had accused him of this grooming and stuff like that. One, he said his name was Jacob, and he had asked for advice from him, and he was doubtful that Patrick Clark was in fact Velveteen Dream, so he decided to call him in kayfabe as the character, and that led to eventually Jacob accusing him of these things. The other one, however, is a little bit interesting. The name of this guy was Joshua Fuller, who he said he met Josh after a stint on Tough Enough in 2015 at a meet and greet. They developed a friendship through a mutual trainer at GXW, and I'm not going to go through the entirety of the specifics of this. If you want the full story, I can link to you the full document in the description below this video. But Joshua, who claimed he was 16 according to Patrick, had eventually suffered concussion in 2017, and he was worried that Joshua would injure himself further, and he eventually cut up all ties with Joshua in 2018 for a worry that anything Patrick would end up doing would cause Joshua to further his injury. Now, in 2019, there was a tweet in which Velveteen Dream had wanted Joshua to once again contact him. Now, people will think of this as a hole in the story. However, keep in mind the situation involving the concussion. Maybe Patrick would would want to reestablish contact with him, because remember the reason that was given. We have to look at all points that matter. And from what we're seeing here, and from the amount of assistance that Patrick claimed he wanted to give to people, I don't put it past him to perhaps maybe now there is reasonable doubt in order to provide some form of due process. Remember, the whole reason why we give, or should be giving, all the accused some kind of due process is because we don't want somebody who has the gall to take advantage of the situation of believing victims, or to take victims' stories seriously as a way to destroy someone's life out of spite, because it is very hard to shake the accusations that are levied against you of this manner. And even for people who are completely innocent or proven completely innocent, is the accusation in of itself that causes people to want to cancel you, or to call you out, or to forever hold a black cloud over you, or to witch hunt you. And that's why due process, and to, while you take the victim story seriously, you always give the defendant a chance to defend themselves. That's why they call it the defendant, because you want to make sure you establish that. You want to make sure you establish the notion that, hey, even though we're going to take the victim's story seriously, we don't want somebody who is just going to take advantage of the system to take advantage of the system. We don't want somebody who is just trying to ruin somebody's life out of spite, out of maybe a date that gone wrong, and you just want to extract revenge on somebody by claiming something that never did happen. We're going to make sure that all our bases are covered before we go and levy judgment against somebody. Now, as I said, the WWE did an internal investigation that didn't see any of the accusations being credible. Now, there are some people who would say that, hey, WWE is doing a CYA and trying to be in good PR, but also remember that they don't actually want to have any lawsuits levied against them. If they were ending up firing the guy and then saying that maybe he's innocent, then what would happen if Velveteen Dream decided, hey, I'm going to file a wrongful termination suit? That might be a thing too. That might be something that comes down the pipeline, because the WWE could be releasing him for other means as well. Remember, he had a bit of backstage heat, as I recall. I don't quite remember the story that well, but I do remember reading somewhere that he was not exactly the most well-liked person in the locker room. He had his friends, but he also had his enemies, let's put it that way. But this lengthy of a post and this lengthy of a story behind it is enough probably to maybe raise some reasonable doubt that maybe they should be investigated a little bit further. And plus, keep in mind all the things I said in that one video that I mentioned about Brian Zane and the speaking out thing, is that in some states the age of consent is still 16 years of age, and it varies state by state. I was surprised myself when I went to research that kind of story to realize that there is no federal age of consent. One might wonder why there isn't. That would clear up a lot of problems with this sort of thing, with this sort of interstate relationship, or maybe something like that, or this would clear a lot of stuff up, assuming that he did this to begin with and he's just not lying out of his teeth. But we've seen this type of thing happen before. We've seen this type of thing happen, especially with Matt Riddle and that stalker that decided to accuse him. There's a lot of problems that go along with just widely believing someone before you get both sides of the story. And the reason why we do that is so no one does take advantage of it, and so we give the accused a fair and even trial. Even in the court of public opinion, you have to do that, or else you're going to find somebody taking firm advantage of it, like the stalker was doing with Matt Riddle, or what was happening with Vic Mandonga, and he's still suffering because of that. And people still think he's guilty, and there was never proof one way or the other. And yes, both sides had bungled that whole entire case there. So it's really important that you get it correct. You hear both sides of the story. And I think there's enough here to raise some reasonable doubt. Is it going to save him? Maybe not. Is there holes in the story? There could be, if that whole thing with Josh Fuller and his tweet in 2019 turns out that it was something other than him trying to reestablish connections after the concussion was cleared up. I'm not saying he's guilty or innocent. I'm saying this is enough for me to to want to put the ball back onto the court of the accusers in a manner of speaking. To, hey, let's make sure that we have our T's and I's crossed before we go accusing people. Maybe we're too quick. Maybe I'm too quick. Maybe a lot of us are too quick to just believe a story. Yes, take a story seriously, but be sure you get both sides before you pass judgment. That's all we ask. And finally, to close out these trifecta of stories, Dana Warrior, or Dana Hellwig, the widow of the late controversial wrestler The Ultimate Warrior, had slammed Vice Media in a quick but very sweet social media post. If you do not recall, A&E has been running biographies of WWE legends, and one of them that they ran last Sunday was the one about Ultimate Warrior, Jim Hellwig, a very controversial talent who captured the hearts and minds of kids everywhere back in the Federation days before the new generation came about. However, he was marred in a lot of controversy when he went into his later days, about the 2000s, and he started doing all those speeches, and he started to have all those weird, very bigoted remarks back in those days. Now, we're not going to excuse the things that were said back then. No one's actually going to do that. Neither biography, neither us are condoning the things that were said then. And we don't want there to be any mistake at all by anything we say is, in fact, devaluing the fact that we are not condoning anything that was said during those speeches or anything like that. And anything we say in defense of the Ultimate Warrior is not taking back condemnations of some of the things he said at that point in time. However, you may recall that Vice Media is also running their own sort of documentary about the sport of professional wrestling, that being Dark Side of the Ring, and they have ran a few different documentaries about some very controversial moments in wrestling history, such as the tragic story of the Von Erichs, the Fabulous Moolah, the Benoit incident, the Owen Hart incident, and so on and so forth. But they're going to come out with their latest episode this Thursday entitled Becoming Warrior on Vice TV on certain cable networks, and I would assume it was streaming somewhere. Well, Dana Warrior was asked if she was contacted by Vice and if she would be taking part in this docudrama. The person who had asked this has said, quote, "Do you know about Darkseid doing a documentary on Warrior coming out Thursday? Did you approve of this? Please let us know." And her response, and it is checkmarked, so we do know it is her that said this, saying, "I had no part in this project. Smut and filth does not rise to my note." Simply put, she does not approve of this. I would not suspect that would be her actually giving the documentary any bit of praise whatsoever. Now, it is interesting to note that Vice News had actually did an extensive interview for this documentary with Sherry Tyree, who is the ex-wife of the Ultimate Warrior, which might have something to do with why Dana Warrior would not want to be involved with this one. Furthermore, she had been involved in the biography, the A&E program that ran their Ultimate Warrior biography, which, by the way, A&E kind of owns about 10% of Vice Media. So keep that in mind. We say, okay, A&E did a more glamorous version of the Ultimate Warrior documentary, because A&E kind of has a hand on both of these documentaries. But the A&E biography of Ultimate Warrior was shouting a little bit of mixed reviews. Some people were wondering if WWE had A&E gloss over some of the more controversial elements of the Warrior's life. And Dana Warrior has been criticized as to making the Ultimate Warrior's life be more glamorous than it really is, which I don't think would be the case. And with some subreddits, mainly a Squared Circle, claiming that they didn't do enough to highlight the dark times or the things that he had said in those speeches. And I'm not going to go into detail what those are. You probably figure out what those are. But you had some subreddits, mainly the Squared Circle, who wanted to have A&E more or less focus solely on those controversial elements and try their best to try to cancel him further than they ever thought they could. Now, I said that we would bring up Brian Zane yet again, but he's one of those people who keeps saying that they shouldn't name a award after him on the Hall of Fame, that they should indeed cancel him. And Brian Zane's been a kind of problem point lately. He's done this for quite a few years now. I'm not quite sure what is going on, but he's been kind of the driving force lately in a string of wrestling-oriented channels who is quite ready to cancel people at the slightest hint of any wrongdoing a wrestler does before they get all the facts straight. Now, I'm not saying that they are right or wrong, but it does seem like they want to provide the guilty until proven innocent mantra, especially when we consider that this is Vice News. This is Vice Media that we are going to see put out these documentaries, put out this thing about Warrior, when Vice was the exact same place that 2 years ago, and this is something that they have not actually said anything about and have not apologized for. They had two of their reporters in Vice News try to solicit a comment from the 8chan owner. If you remember that, they were never invited to his house. They decided to knock on the door when they knew that his site was well known to have the capacity to have people so mad that they would want to come to his house and do bad things to him, and he would be well within his right to protect himself. They were never invited, and when they got called out on it, they set their Twitter accounts to private, because why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they when they got called out on this? Yeah, you can say whatever you want about 8chan, but to this day, we haven't seen any kind of remorse for what had transpired, which, by the way, they were also accused of breaking and entering into the house, and they were trying to find information that had to do with the exact same reason that Dan Olsen wrote that stuff he did about 8chan a long time ago. That was about that situation. So yes, Vice News has a reputation for not exactly being on the straight and narrow when it comes to their journalism. Now, of course, given that, how much do you think that this whole documentary about the Ultimate Warrior is going to be unbiased? Also, given the fact that they are going to be talking to his ex-wife, who's probably going to have a jaded viewpoint about him anyway, because traditionally that's what estranged spouses would want to talk about, the bad things. And some of these people are within cancel culture. The version of cancel culture has to do with bringing up people's past and always holding that black cloud over that individual about it, regardless of whether or not they want to grow and to shed themselves with that reputation and of those thoughts. They were acting as though they wanted to hear about this bad stuff, that they wanted to have that black cloud to hang over them. They wanted to find a reason, and that's unfair. That is not correct to do. When the Ultimate Warrior was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, and during that whole Hall of Fame ceremony and during all of those days leading up to it, it was reported by just about everybody who had met him and who had talked with him in that they were happy to see him bury the hatchet, to see him ask for forgiveness, and they were more than willing to bury the hatchet and to forgive him and let bygones be bygones. And the only thing that stopped him from furthering that campaign of forgiveness and retribution and reconciliation and rehabilitation of his image was his death just a couple days after he was inducted. So you want to talk about the WWE glossing over the bad stuff? How about the rest of the world glossing over the fact that he was forgiven for all of that? How about the entirety of the social media cancel culture landscape? And yes, I'm going to use the words cancel culture because this is what that is. How about the rest of that world ignoring the fact that Hulk Hogan, Jake the Snake Roberts, DDP, they all said that, hey, he turned his life around and became a great person, and the only thing that stopped him was his death. If a man who was reportedly in bad terms with so many of these people could have them say, hey, we forgive this guy, if they have with themselves to do that, then why can't anybody else? They've buried a hatchet. Why can't we? Why can't Brian Zane do that? Why can't Square Circle subreddit do that? Why can't half of the people who are on social media now, who are on these wrestling podcasts and on these wrestling YouTube channels, do that? I don't understand understand it. I don't get it. Why do you think that the Vice documentary is going to be any less biased? They're just going to say what you want to hear. I mean, he probably knew that his days were numbered and he wanted to use those final moments of his life in order to bury the hatchet with a lot of people and to make sure that things were cool with everybody now. To say, hey, all those things, maybe they weren't my best moments in life. And we all go through that. Why now we want to hold those black clouds over everybody's head when they're trying to get out of those clouds? What is it about that we feel is that entertaining that we want to do it constantly, that we like to see people suffer? I do not understand that. So can we not do that anymore? Can we not seek and want to find a reason to keep canceling people, especially when they ask for forgiveness and they got it? Now we're going to take the forgiveness back because a few people on the internet decide, hey, we have to still punish people for their crimes even when they have more or less paid their due time for it. Dana Warrior said exactly what we all should be thinking, but fortunately I feel as though it's going to fall on deaf ears because not enough people are calling out this whole witch hunt culture business. And you're asking for a organization that is known to break into people's houses in order to get a good scoop, in order to get a story, in order to get a clickbait title for objectivity about a person you want to see get canceled even further than they have any right to be, assuming they had any right to be to begin with. And you're willing to believe an estranged ex-wife who's probably going to have a jaded viewpoint about him and going to have a biased viewpoint about him, but you won't believe someone who was married to him up until the time of its passing and might have a bit of a better understanding about the quote-unquote dark times that he had. Just think about that when you go to watch the latest Brian Zane video that he whines and cries that the Warrior Ward exists. That's going to do it for this special report. Thanks as always for watching. If you liked what you see, go ahead and hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe for more geek gaming culture because it always helps out. And also please comment about what you thought about the stories today. To close out this particular video, I'm going to give you the OCRemix track of the day because this was also, we want to remember a man who always spoke his mind regardless of whether or not people liked his opinion. That was the late John Total Biscuit Bain, who it's been 3 years since his passing on, I think it was May 24th, I do believe, and I'm doing this on the 25th. It's 3 years, almost 3 years to the day since his passing, and his voice is sorely missed in the gaming industry, especially now. Kind of need a voice like his right now with all the stuff that's been going on lately. And I'm going to be playing a Metroid track from Gaspode called Vast Infinities from the original series, the OG Metroid, called Vast Infinities Crazed Chamber is what the track they're remixing is. And I have a very good reason why I'm picking a Metroid track is because there's been on the Metroid subreddit a tier maker war about what games in the Metroid series are best and what are trash, and I kind of made a bit of controversy in that subreddit because I listed Other M in a B tier, and God forbid we actually say Other M was not a black plague on the Metroid franchise, because yeah, to some people it's been 11 years after that game came out and people are still triggered that that kind of game exists in the Metroid franchise, and it's not even that bad. Not even the story is that bad, but I will talk about that another time. Please enjoy this OCRemix track. Thank you for watching. My name is JD Shadow. That just happened.